Hmm? Hello, testing, testing, mic check, testing, 1, 2, testing. Guess we'll need some chatting stream here, or some chatting pause.
Dinner party emergency.
Call for a squad car?
He's stuck in GIF mode.
Need more over here.
This whole friend group needs a reboot. Hey, listen up.
This is PlayLink for PS4. These are games you can play with your friends using your phones.
I love PlayLink and I love my friends.
PlayStation.
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 Alright, folks, we'll be going live here in just a minute. Whoa. Alright, since we get dings off of that, we should probably close that down. We'll close that down. By the way, I'm on Motor Trend on Demand, because, you know, that's what you do. Motor Trend on Demand, because that's what you do. Might be a little quiet tonight because my mic is actually sitting a little further away than it normally is, so we will just have to deal with that as we see fit. I'm going to Twitch chat, refresh, okay. Off on. We got chat. And we are live, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in to Word Art Online. That is the Wowcast. The internet's, I wouldn't say greatest, but aspiring to be an entertaining resource for writers and of all kinds. Whether you're an adventure writer, whether you're a fantasy writer, whether you're a script writer for movies, or perhaps you're just a blogger. Any kind of writers, what we're here to do is to entertain and to encourage other writers. I'm your host, Joe, one of 3 hosts here on Wowcast. I am a freelance writer for Harsh Realities currently, working on Elfwood, which is an RPG campaign setting, which should be released sometime this year. I am kind of an aspiring RPG writer, role-playing game or interactive fiction writer. I've been dabbling a little bit in fiction for a little while now for a story called Looking for Group, and Looking for Group, not Groot. Even though Looking for Groot might be a good novel to write. I'm enjoying my job. I'm a single dad, soon to be completed, hopefully. Single dad. Where, I'm just taking each day one step at a time, and each page one word at a time, and figuring out what the next story is. Ben Weiss is another one of our co-hosts, and he's been dealing with some family stuff, and our hearts reach out to him and his family, and hopefully we'll get him back on here pretty soon. Ben is kind of a hobbyist writer. He's got one thing published, and he does have an IMDb page for his voice acting abilities, which is kind of nice. And we have the most successful of us, Matthew E. Nordine. He is the only one of us that actually has a book published and has made, I think, money off of it. He has published a book called Not Drop the Plate on the Floor? No. Musings of the Northern Poet by Matthew E. Nordine. You can find this on Amazon. It is soon to be coming to Kindle, but is poems of love and faith, kind of some of his exploration into the world of poetry, and he has another fiction novel coming out soon, which we're really excited for, and we're really proud of Matt. Matt and I, of course, are the founders of it, and of Wowcast, and we brought Ben in for NaNoWriMo, and it's been such a great thing to have all three of us together and enjoying the shows as we push forward. You can find more information about Wowcast at wowcast.com. You can follow us on the Twitterverse. That's Wowcast, or Word Art Online, the number 1. And you can also find information about us on our Facebook pages. Matt has his own author page. Matt is also part of a group called Scenery Changes, which is it's kind of an improv troupe and education troupe, which is pretty fun. And I'm really, really excited to see what he does with that. They've got a YouTube channel and a blog, kind of a video blog type thing. So definitely give everybody a thumbs up and a like. For those of you that are tuning into our YouTube channel, this is every Tuesday. We go live. We try every Tuesday to go live on twitch.tv/wordartonline. And basically, we're just here to inspire ourselves to write, keep that accountability together, and encourage other writers to do the same. I'm excited to be here for another. I think we're over a year. We've been doing this for over a year now, and that's pretty exciting. I'm flying solo tonight because the other two guys are busy with life stuff, and that's cool, or have bad signal, as sometimes is the case. So, where am I at with writing? Currently, as I mentioned, Elfwood is getting under wraps, and I'm plugging away with a few adventure paths that will be released sometime next year. Trying to finish that up. I know the rest of the team is working hard and finishing up their obligations, and so we can hammer pretty hard on Elfwood. I have Escape from the Con, which is it's called digital fiction, which is a new term that I've heard slung around a few times, and it's basically where the fiction centered around augmented reality. That is the virtual environments. Dot Hack is a good example of it. The old anime, Sword Art Online, a few others. Ready Player One is another prime example of digital fiction, and I'm pretty excited to see what comes of that. Digital fiction, I don't know if that name is going to stick with the masses, because you think digital fiction and it doesn't necessarily mean a genre type. To me, it pops in my head as more of a type of publishing format. Oh, hey, you do digital fiction? Yeah, well, you published it just online in digital format. But you never know. I'm sure there along the way there's different genres that popped up and different elements that or different types of writing that happen to pop up, and people people end up having different ideas and moving forward, and they have their own names for things, and like science fiction versus fantasy fiction, and combination of the two, or the 20 different types. So I'm working on that. I hope to have Escape from the Con done. Well, I'm running a panel of it at Animated BrassCon. That is November 10th, 11th, and 12th. I'm also running a Wowcast recording there, and the plan is to record an episode, do a live episode. I'll just have a camera. I won't actually have the full laptop set up. I might end up setting the laptop up, but I haven't decided that part yet. But hopefully we're going to record and then pipe it in, figure out a way to pipe it in. Do I write books? We have our chat program up through Twitch. It does take about 2 minutes or so, about 2 minutes for it to kick in. So if I don't respond right away, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just takes me a minute to get it. Do I write books? Currently, I'm in the process of writing a book called Looking for Group. It's about a gentleman going through his kind of life changes as he's the owner of a game store, board and tabletop game store. Matt Nordine, he's our more famous poet. He's one of our other hosts. He has written Musings of the Northern Poet, and he has a fiction book coming out sometime towards the end of the year. And Ben Weiss has a couple other books as well, but we are kind of in the process. We're still new to a lot of this stuff, and we're trying to basically get ourselves up to the point where we feel comfortable and confident to publish. I'd love to do some short stories and stuff, and I've been pushing that direction a little bit. My focus has been more role-playing game stuff, but you got to start somewhere to hone your craft. What is it? The old saying, do what you know, and learn the way, and then find your own way. So that's kind of where we're at. So tonight we were going to talk a little bit about conflict. Why is it that in stories we love to have that conflict? You have some stories out there that are pretty mediocre conflicts. One of the shows I'll actually reference a couple of TV shows with this. I think they're based off books, but I'm not sure. Are the Heartland, the TV series. It's on Netflix. It's about a horse ranch and a girl that basically works with horses, and it's kind of a feel-good, lovey-dovey show. And I've really enjoyed the show just because it doesn't have the super heavy conflicts that a lot of Breaking Bad and Battlestar Galactica have, but it's a nice relaxing twist from the regular. But in a story, in a book, if you just have melodramatic story arcs where there's a small climax and then it drops off, there's a small climax and then it drops off, say it's just an argument between two people, those books don't tend to do very well, or those stories don't tend to draw the reader in very well, whereas a book that has massive conflicts, Game of Thrones, for example, if you go through those books and you have this all of you builds up, tension builds up, and then boom, they hit you really hard with a climactic battle, and it's like why do we draw into those kind of conflicts, and then we have reality, which has its own conflicts, right? We have political left, political right, political middle. We've got who's arguing with who, or who's shooting what missiles at who, and you have this base conflict that's happening all across the world. And even in personal lives, you have families that are being torn apart every day. You've got even families that are being torn apart just by cancer. Cancer itself is a conflict, whether it's a good conflict as far as something that people actually get through, or it could be an even worse, difficult conflict people get through, where the main character passes away at the end. And I don't use the main character lightly on that either, because cancer is kind of a pain in the hoochie hoo, and it's anybody that's dealing with that, I'm reaching out to you. But conflict is there's tons of conflict everywhere. You have the light conflict, which is the romance conflict. Does she like me? Does she not? The love triangles is the conflict. You've got sometimes it can be distance is the conflict. There's different kinds of conflicts that happen within a story that way. There are a few. There can be conflicts as far as like nations going toe to toe with each other, but in reality, it all stems from kind of the same wave. It's just how impactful is it? Is it something that's gonna, if you have a love quarrel, a love conflict, right, where boy likes girl, girl kind of likes boy but isn't sure, she has the inner conflict, and then you have boy has the external conflict of, well, girl doesn't seem to show signs that he likes her, or she likes him, so he in a fleet of curiosity, he finds girl C, and girl C kind of likes him, so they start dating, and which causes conflict with A and B. And then you throw in a bunch of other stuff, but those conflicts are, while seemingly surface level, as far as like low end, not really like a dramatic end of the world type thing. To the characters, if anybody's ever been in those situations, it can be a very big struggle when it comes to the conflict between the two. It just depends on where you're at in the story. You look at the conflict of I'll use the House of Cards series as an example. I love the series, the dramatic build-up, the conflicts, the political intrigue, the darn near close to reality of that series. Even Jericho is another good one. You have these characters that build up, and these conflicts that the characters have are massive, but the way they wrote the Underwoods and some of the other political figures who have been in this their whole lives, the conflict isn't that big for them. It's almost like they're just brushing it off their shoulders. Yes, there's some things that come out of left field, and putting that kind of depth into a story, into a character, really shows a writer's ability to hone their craft and to be an impactful writer. That's something that I like to do, is and I'm trying to aspire to get there. Probably why I haven't written or published a novel or a fiction story yet, is simply because my characters are flat, I think. I know some of them have depth. There's one story that I wrote that where it was a character going out for a walk after he had a dream about a girl falling and committing suicide, and he's picturing this girl, and her life, basically her life kind of flashes in his mind, and he can't figure out why it's there, and it's kind of this internal conflict of his own dreams and his own struggle with life. And he's a photographer, so he's dealing with that, and being able to put depth into him. I had a couple people read it, and they liked the premise of it, and especially dealing with depression and anxiety and stuff. And I got to a point with that story that just it lacked a depth of conflict with, to keep a reader entertained for a novel length. Now, maybe a short story, absolutely, it might actually work, and I might tool with it a little bit to try to figure out a way to incorporate that into a short story compilation, or add it to try to enter it into a contest or something. You never know. So I've been, let's see, other kinds of conflict. You can have conflicts of friendships, which again can be surface level or even, but again, to us, looking at it from the outside, can be surface level, but the people that are dealing with it, it can have a depth to them where they can't see around through the storm. I heard Dave Ramsey, I listened to his podcast on iTunes at work, and one of the things that he was saying was the fact that a lot of the people that he has calling into his show, now if you don't know what Dave Ramsey is, he's a financial peace counselor, and kind of that debt guidance counselor. People call into his show and they're sitting on $50,000 of debt and they don't know what to do, and he's got a basic plan of save $1,000 emergency fund, knock out debt with a debt snowball. Let's see, get 3 to 6 months in savings, and then so forth. Those are the big elements of it. But he's a really good speaker, and one of the things that he talks about, or that he mentioned today, was most of the people that call into his show, he's not gonna justify you're stupid. And what he meant by that was, if he gives you advice 4 or 5 times and you're still not getting the picture of what's going on, he's gonna basically go on to the next person, because it's not so much that you're in lack of need of help. It's just a lot of the callers are trying to get the wrong advice, where the people that he does help are sometimes so deep in the storm that, caller calls in, she's making $160,000 a year and she's $30,000 in debt, but because she's so deep into it, she doesn't see a way out of getting that $30,000 out of debt. And you break that character down. Okay, why is she in debt? Why is she hurting as much as she is? And usually it's not just the money that's causing the issue. The conflict in that area is, whether maybe it's a marriage issue, maybe it's a conflict of she's still living at home, or she's got a relative that's basically being an emotional drain on her, and she's got some other issues that she needs to take care of, because realistically, if you're making $160,000 a year, there's really unless you're living in a big mansion and have a massive car payment every month, there really shouldn't be any reason why you couldn't knock $30,000 out in a month or two. But like I said, I've never been there. I've only ever, I think the highest I ever made pay-wise is maybe $30,000, maybe. And that was when I was working in the factory, and that was only for a couple months. So I don't know what it's like to be making $160,000 and be $30,000 in debt, to where I'm so panicked that it's like, what's going on? But through writing a story, breaking that inspiration down into different character elements, you can begin to see where a reader, somebody who's sitting there and actually reading a book, and a story about this character who's just, she's sitting by the night. She's sitting at her dining room table. The bills are strung out. She's struggling to make ends meet, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to cover her kids' tuition for the next month. How is she going to provide food for the kids? And little Billy, from the next room, he's playing with a couple of his friends, and you hear a crash, and he starts crying. He starts wailing a scream that she's never seen before, or she's never heard before. And she goes in there, and his arm is kind of swelling up, and so she rushes to the hospital, and she ends up. It ends up that little Billy broke his arm, and there's more bills that she's sitting there in the hospital as they're doing their stuff on our kid's arm. Granted, some of it's covered by insurance, but not everything's going to be covered by insurance. So she's struggling with trying to figure out how she's going to pay for all this, and it just keeps piling on. And then she goes into the anger element of conflict, where she wants to blame somebody. She's got to blame somebody. She's frustrated. She's tired of blaming herself, so she blames her ex-husband who left. She's struggling to try to figure out the conflict of blaming somebody else and trying to just, instead of working at the issue, she's pushing all this stuff out. And maybe she finds herself kind of in a kind of a mental break, and her kid's off at school. The next day, kid's off to school, and the kid's kind of all excited because people are signing his arm, and he lets the teachers know. And maybe one of the teachers, one of the counselor, the school counselor or something, pulls the gal aside and says, "Hey, we noticed that you've been a little stressed lately. Is everything okay?" That one person, that one voice in the story, reaches out to this lady, our main character, and she says the character just breaks down. She collapses in the school's hallway, and she's struggling with that inner conflict of what am I going to do? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to manage all this stuff. This is crazy. And you come to find out that through some of that conflict, that her folks passed away earlier not too long ago. The people that she relied on to seek advice to help her through this stuff aren't there, and for whatever reason, she's just overwhelmed with all this stuff. And you have the counselor, you have the external force comes in and says, okay, come to my office. They're still in the school, and she says, they go into the office and sit down, shut the door, talk, and through the course of the conversation, the day passes, and she finally gets, they get to the grip of some of the conflict. She calms down. Our main character calms down. She's figuring out, okay, just take a deep breath, and let's figure out that next step. What is that next step? Our main character is so deep in the storm of life that's happening around her, she can't focus on anything else but that storm. You have the external character coming in to help. Sometimes that external force coming in could be a mental character. I believe that's where you get those the ghost-like characters, the guides, the spiritual guides and stuff that come in to help. You've got different ways of encouraging somebody. Maybe if it's a Christian novel or a book, maybe they receive a message from God or their God or deity or something. You could go that route. You could go like the external force, the counselor that came in and helped out. But again, all this conflict builds up, and it's one of those things that in life we have conflicts that when we get to the end of them, if we let them, if we work with them and fight them to fix them, we'll learn something from them. And I'm a firm believer that if you have a conflict that you let take control of you, it's going to beat you down every step of the way. Writing characters are almost the same. If you have a character, and I've had a few characters in some of the short stories that I've written, where it's the most annoying character that I have ever written, and he just won't die. I'll put the words to the page where he gets a massive injury because somebody took him out, or he had some kind of illness come across him, and I just can't pull the trigger to kill the character off. Because he's so ingrained in the story and what I'm trying to do, he provides the depth of the story. Now, if you have a character in your story, say the gal that we were just talking about, she gets to the end of this conflict, right? The counselor helps her out, helps her through some of the stuff. The counselor earns her trust enough to take a look at her spreadsheet, her finances, and she says, she takes a look at it, spreads it out, makes a Google Doc, even has, goes as far as making a whiteboard of, okay, this is your debts, this is how much you're making, this is what you have to have for every month. That's electricity, that's gas, that's gas for the car, that's food for the kids, that's food for you, and, money for medicine, stuff like that. The needs, the necessities of life. That doesn't include Netflix. That doesn't include going down to the spa for a few months until the debt's taken care of. And through the course of the story, you can not only does that conflict educate the character, where she comes out of this going, you know what? This was hell. This was a sliver of hell, and I made it through it. I'm stronger now. Another conflict comes up. Okay, she's, a few years down the road. Her kid's a senior in high school, about to graduate. She has a little bit saved up for college, but not a lot. And because she wants her kid to go straight to college. But she also understands the dangers of a child going off to college in debt. Where the conflict is the kid remembers when he broke his arm and how much turmoil his mom was in. Maybe it took a few years for her to get out of that slump, to get financially stable, to get financially better off. So our main character goes and discusses the issues with her counseling friend. Maybe they've developed a really deep friendship through this. Maybe our main character has helped the other person through some conflicts of their own. And you get to a certain point where the main character has a conflict with his kid. Main character is pushing to get the kid off to school, whatever it takes to get the kid off to school. The kid doesn't want to go to school right away. Kid just wants to go straight into the workforce. Whether it's slinging burgers and make work pay for college. But the little conflict that happens there between the two. It's a minor conflict to us, but again, how many in the real world? How many parents have that conflict with their kids when it comes to dealing with the college issue? You got massive loads of debt coming out of college when some of these kids aren't geared for a 4-year degree. They would have been fine going into a trade. And the nice thing is as writers, as storytellers, we can take a story like I just explained, going through the process of her dealing with the emotional baggage of going into debt, the storm that happened with the broken leg, and all the life that's happened all the way up until he goes off to college. And maybe that's the last page of the book or the story, where he does go off to college, or he goes off on his own, and the road is open for him, but for her, a chapter's ended. And not only can you educate the character and educate yourself as you've just written a story or a creative conflict and resolved it, think about ways that you can help others through that story. Maybe somebody picks up the story and they're going through the same kind of thing. They've got a little bit of debt and they're trying to knock their way out. Maybe they're having a conflict with a kid that is struggling to decide what they want to do after school or after high school, and who knows what kind of story. There's conflict everywhere, and like I said, there can be the depth of story out there is amazing, and but I don't really have a lot more on conflict I can talk about. We did have some interaction from the chat tonight, which I really appreciated. Princess 33, thank you so much for joining up with us and being with us for the duration of this. This has been more of the structured one that I've done, and I'm hoping to do more of these as I'm researching the craft of writing and considering going back to school for it. I've got a bachelor's degree and I've got a associate's degree, and I don't know. I think it'd be fun to learn more about the craft and take some Udemy courses or something like that for it. I know there's some out there, and Black Friday's coming around the corner, so $15 courses. Maybe they'll sponsor the show. That would be nice. Anyway, let's see what else. Find out more information about Wowcast at wowcast.com. That's WAOCAST.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Shadowfix, SHAD0FX. Matthew E. Nordine has his own. Scenery Changes has their own. Ben has his own. And if you do follow him, if you do chat out to him and give him a thumbs up and say we appreciate what you guys do with Wowcast. If you have disgruntles against us, send your complaints in a self-addressed stamped envelope to our studios with a $20 bill attached to it, and we can guarantee that you don't have to listen to our show ever again. That's the disclaimer. Doesn't mean we'll, not air again, but just means you don't have to watch it. Not that you had to before. It's just fun when you do. Okay, so we've talked about conflict in story. Let's talk a little bit about conflict in RPG games. That's something that I'm pretty fond of writing and stuff, and you could pretty much turn what we did just a few minutes ago into a conflict, or into a little RPG encounter. Kingdom A is dealing with some issues when it comes to the glory of the kingdom, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to survive the winter with the measly crops they've got, and they know that they're going to need a few extra supplies for the coming winter, and come to find out they, maybe there's a neighboring village or something that has some resources that they're more than happy to give to help out, but some of the elders of the group of the town don't want to go through with that, and so it's up to the party to either negotiate terms of the agreements. Maybe the parties meant to go out and find food. Maybe there's scarcity of deer or game meat that they can't find, and so they have to go out and try to find that. That could be an interesting adventure. It doesn't have a lot of conflict as far as elves and goblins and gnomes and oh my, but it could be as simple as just, hey, you're going out and foraging for food. One of the ideas I had for 6S, which is the kind of the overall game mechanic for Elfwood, is a kingdom builder kind of game where each player, instead of playing a role-playing game where everybody's a fighter, mage, thief, wizard, stuff like that, you're actually a king of a kingdom. And I still haven't figured out a lot of the mechanics on it, because it's where it runs into issues with me is how is this fun for people who are usually playing the role-playing games, and how is it enticing enough to keep those guys there and keep those guys coming back with the kingdoms. I know there is a kingdom builder Pathfinder adventure path that I'd really like to play at some point. And I know I've talked to Ben a little bit, Ben and Matt, about doing a live stream of some RPGs here for the Wowcast group, and I think that'd be kind of fun. But the conflicts that can arise from there, you could have the conflict of land, of resources. Maybe one province has a mine, the other province has wood, another province has sheep. You could even lay it out with a Catan board and use that as your base settlement, your base map, adventure map. And it'd be kind of fun to see somebody make a game like that. I know what I'm doing with Escape from the Con, the conflicts that happen in that there's quite a few of them. The gist of Escape from the Con is people are pulled into this virtual world, and they don't realize that they're in a virtual world right away. Pretty quickly they start to realize that something's not right and something's off. And there is an element to it, or a kind of a sub-chapter, where you have FPS guys coming into this hotel, and the reason why I didn't start with that one was because a lot of the issues that have come up with guns and hotels and reality of stuff. And I've already got maps of a couple of hotels for inspiration for the Escape from the Con, but I didn't want to venture too far into it out of respect for those that are dealing with the conflicts and stuff. But the main thing of Escape from the Con is everybody's at an anime convention, a digital anime convention, when basically all heck breaks loose. The lights go out, a natural disaster happens, or zombie outbreak happens. A version of the zombie outbreak happens. I'm using a kind of a Raggedy Man villain type, where it's just a big pile of rags, and they kind of suck people in and absorb them. But it's going to be pretty exciting. The conflicts, I think, as a writer, we run into more conflicts in our head than a lot of people do. Just as creative in general, I think the most creative minds out there have a lot of conflict in their head. I think that's why depression and anxiety and stuff runs so high. Is your mind's running 90 miles an hour, and you're trying to focus in on that one thing that you've got going on that you need to get done, but you can't, because your mind is coming up with new creative thing, shiny kind of elements. And so I think on that note, folks, it has been about 45 minutes, and we've had a pretty good show so far. Again, thank you to our chat for piping in. We're here. We're trying to be here every Tuesday, doing a writers hangout, talking writing and reading and what we're writing and stuff. NaNoWriMo is coming. It starts next week, next Wednesday, which is Halloween, and Tuesday's Halloween. Wednesday's the 1st. NaNoWriMo is the National Novel Writing Month. It takes place in November. 50,000 words in 30 days is the challenge. And so far I've got 2 people signed up for it, Matt and Hannah. And I'm looking at getting a few more signed up, which I think would be cool. And we're going to push for encouraging each other to keep writing. And we'll do the word war stuff like we did before in the year past. I don't know how we're going to do it yet, or if we're going to do the kind of the challenge thing that we did. But it's going to be exciting to see what's coming. So for more information about Word Art Online or Wowcast, go to wowcast.com, WAOCAST.com. Follow me on Twitter at Shadowfix. You can follow the Wowcast on Twitter. It's at Word Art Online, the number 1. And you can also find Matthew Nardine and Ben Weiss on there as well. For all the folks here at the shining Wowcast Studios, we're signing off, and happy writing.